You know, it's girls only, Amanda said again, as if she had just discovered fire. Her voice carried that smug, lilt I'd come to recognize over years of living in this house. The one where my presence was optional unless money or muscle was required. And just like every other time, I froze for a fraction of a second. A polite laugh lodged somewhere between my throat and the floor, before turning my attention back to my phone. That little phrase, girls only, it wasn't just words. It was a declaration, a constant reminder that no matter how much I gave, no matter how many bills I footed, or how often I fixed broken appliances, I was always the invisible one. The guy who existed in the gaps of their photos. A background actor in their curated lives. I'm Ethan, 28, male. The sole man in a sprawling network of women who treated everything as if I were a ghost. My mother, Christine, 2 older sisters, Amanda and Taylor, and Aunt Lisa and Aunt Rebecca. Aunts on my mother's side, fiercely loyal to each other and entirely indifferent to my presence. Unless, of course, it involved money. I grew up in this ecosystem where I was expected to keep the machinery running quietly behind the scenes, while they basked in the spotlight of sisterhood, brunches, and spa days. My dad left years ago, during a bitter divorce that my mother never let me forget. Whenever I disagreed or asked a question, I'd hear the old digs, "You're just like your father." That phrase, repeated for decades, became less of an insult and more of a blueprint for how I was supposed to behave: quiet, obliging, never too visible, always reliable. At first, I complied. I paid bills, lent money, fixed fridges, drove cars to repair shops. I was family, by blood, by obligation, and apparently by default. A walking wallet. The first girls' only weekend started harmlessly. Amanda had dragged a few of them to see a movie, some superhero nonsense, and they came back raving about it for hours. Christine, Lisa, Rebecca, Taylor, Amanda, the whole crew. It didn't bother me at first. I'd been raised to mind my own business, and honestly, I was happy doing so. My job was solid. My apartment mine, my friends around. I didn't need approval or inclusion to feel complete. But little by little, the girls-only label began creeping into every corner of our lives. At first it was just brunch. Then spa days, bowling nights, trips to the zoo, even baseball games. Invitations. None. Posts in the group chat. All of them meticulously filtered so I could see the highlights, but never actually be included. I'd leave a thumbs up emoji, scroll on, and nod to myself that it didn't matter. I told myself I wasn't bothered. But underneath the surface, resentment quietly built. It wasn't the activities themselves. I could live without movies or spa treatments. It was the pattern. Being deliberately excluded while still carrying the financial and logistical weight of the family. I'd been helping for years. Mum needed a new fridge. I bought it. Amanda got laid off for months. I covered her rent. Aunt Lisa's car payment. Handled. Never a word of thanks. Never a hint that I mattered beyond my contributions. And the sisters don't get me started. Every minor achievement of theirs was celebrated like Olympic victories. Every accomplishment I offered, no matter the scale, was shrugged off or ignored. The fridge I bought for Mum last year. "That's nice," she said, as if I were a neighbor lending a cup of sugar at some point. I realized this wasn't about gratitude. It was about control. My contributions weren't appreciated because they were expected. Being part of the inner circle wasn't earned through action or loyalty. It was dictated by birthright and gender. I could fix the dryer, but that didn't earn me access to their lives. I could cover bills, but that didn't earn me a seat at the table. And over time, the realization gnawed at me. This wasn't family. Not in the way I thought it was. One January, it became undeniable. Aunt Lisa's birthday came and went, celebrated quietly by the women in our family, without a single mention to me. No dinner invite, no heads up, no acknowledgement that I'd spent hours selecting a gift, a rare niche herbal tea set she'd mentioned months earlier. I dropped it off like a package, no hugs, no call, just a texted thanks a day later. That's when I felt it, the final weight of being the background actor, the unpaid sponsor of their fun. I was present in everything that required effort, yet absent in every moment of joy. It was in that moment I began to rethink my role. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was tired, exhausted from carrying the family's expectations without ever being allowed to belong. For years, I had let small slights slide, convinced that perhaps they didn't notice or that inclusion wasn't intentional. But this pattern, 2 years, repeated, and perfectly predictable. No invitations, no consideration, just a system designed to exploit my reliability. So I started small, refusing minor requests, saying no when they asked for favors. When Aunt Lisa needed help fixing her screen door, I told her I was busy. When Mum needed help navigating her insurance portal, I directed her to the company. When Amanda asked for a loan, again, I refused. The first wave of panic texts arrived, passive-aggressive, entitled, familiar. My silence was their first taste of what life without me looked like. And then came the beach trip, the annual ritual that had always been partially on me. Booking, deposits, logistics, all under my name, all assumed to be handled without notice. I discovered the final plan through an offhand comment on social media. They were going without me, using my name and money, and not even bothering to include me. Something inside me snapped. Not with fury, but with clarity. No more. I pulled the plug on the reservation, removed my card, and let events unfold. Within hours, the house of cards began to wobble. Confusion turned into panic. The trip fell apart. Bills went unpaid. Debts surfaced. For the first time, the women in my family had to operate without the invisible scaffolding I'd provided for years. And all I did was step back, quietly, efficiently, without drama. The aftermath was surreal. The group chat flooded with guilt trips, panic messages, and manipulations. They tried to spin every consequence as my fault, as if my refusal to be exploited was some moral failing. But I didn't argue. I didn't justify. I just existed, fully, finally, in my own right. That weekend, I booked a solo trip, a mountain cabin, friends, laughter, no expectations, no debts, no invisible obligations. The peace was almost shocking, like stepping into a room I'd built solely for myself. No one needed me. No one depended on me. For the first time in years, I felt the quiet strength of autonomy, and while they scrambled, panicked, and tried to manipulate, I realized something fundamental. Respect isn't a reward for silence. It isn't earned through compliance. It's inherent, and when you refuse to let others define your value, the world bends around your boundaries, sometimes violently, sometimes painfully, but inevitably, truth becomes visible. The morning after the beach trip collapse, my phone blew up. Not literally, but every vibration felt like a grenade going off in my pocket. Group texts, DMS, even a few passive-aggressive emails. Amanda's messages led the charge. I can't believe you ruined everything. This was supposed to be fun. Everyone's so upset. Fun, my ass. It had never been fun when I was doing all the work. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over reply. My brain screamed all the clever things I could type, the biting truths I could throw, but I didn't. Silence, I decided, would be louder than anything I could write. Let them stew. Let them scramble. Let them feel, even if just a fraction, what I felt every day of my life. It wasn't just Amanda. Christine, my mum, chimed in next, her words carefully chosen to sound concerned while dripping with accusation. Nathan, we're family. How can you be so selfish? After all we've done for you. After all they'd done for me. I laughed, a quiet, bitter laugh that even startled me. All those years, I'd been the one doing the heavy lifting, paying bills, fixing cars, setting up events, cleaning, making sure the house ran smoothly. I'd been the invisible linchpin holding this family together. And now, when I finally stepped back, they called me selfish. I didn't respond. I poured a cup of coffee, sat on the porch, and let the chaos unfold digitally. Their messages multiplied, guilt trips colliding with threats and passive aggression. Amanda's tone shifted after a few hours. If you loved us, you'd help. You're making this worse. Love. I realized something then. Love, for them, was conditional, and I'd been paying for it in cash and labor for decades. I made a decision that day. If this family wanted to treat me as invisible, to exploit my presence, I would let them. But I wouldn't go quietly. No more free labor, no more unpaid obligations, no more quiet compromise. I was done being the background actor in their lives. The next week, the fallout was surgical. Aunt Lisa called first. Her voice was sweet, calculated. Nathan, sweetie, I'm having a little trouble with the car loan. Could you just wire me some money? You always help. Always help. Always, always, always. I swallowed the irritation and said calmly, no. There was a pause. I could practically hear her brain scrambling for an angle. Nathan, I thought family helps each other. I cut her off. I've been helping for years. You're capable. I'm sure you can manage. That pause, that moment of stunned silence, was worth more than any paycheck I'd ever given them. Christine tried next. Her tone was different, more emotional, like she'd been trained for this. Nathan, you don't understand. We're in trouble. Amanda can't pay rent. Lisa needs her car. I let her speak. Really let her speak, as if I were taking notes. Then I said, quietly, firmly, without a hint of guilt, Mum, I understand perfectly. I just won't be the one fixing it this time. It was subtle, almost invisible, but the reaction was immediate. Christine's voice cracked. Amanda texted me midday. You're being unreasonable. We need you. This is what family is. And that's when I realized the real dynamic. My family didn't want me. They wanted my labor, my money, my reliability. They didn't want a brother or a son. They wanted a utility. And for the first time, I truly saw them, all of them. The aunts, the sisters, my mother. They weren't malicious in a traditional sense. They weren't plotting to destroy me. They were just comfortable using me as a resource without thinking, without care, without acknowledgement. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, scrolling through old photos. Every family birthday, every holiday, every event, I was there, somewhere in the background, smiling for the camera, arms around others, dressed well, doing my part, invisible. I closed my eyes. I felt the weight of decades of compliance crushing me. I thought about walking away entirely, moving to a new city, a new life, leaving them all behind. But that would be surrender, and I wasn't ready to surrender. Not yet. The next morning, Amanda showed up at my door. She acted casual, like she hadn't spent the last week raging in group chats. "Nathan, can we talk?" I let her in, not because I wanted to, but because I needed them to see the truth. The confrontation wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, brutal in its simplicity. I listed every favor, every bill, every hour I'd spent keeping the family afloat. I watched her face shift from indignation to shock to guilt. You did all that," she stammered. I nodded. "And you never noticed?" She didn't answer. That afternoon, Christine called. She was trembling, but trying to mask it with reasoning. "Nathan, it's not fair to punish everyone because of your feelings. You've been so important to us. Important. Not loved, not cared for. Important." I kept my voice steady. "I'm done being important while invisible. If that makes you uncomfortable, that's your problem, not mine." The fallout was immediate. Suddenly, the carefully orchestrated lives of my family began to wobble. Bills went unpaid. Plans fell apart. Amanda's side hustle collapsed without my covert contributions. Aunt Lisa had to scramble for a ride when her car payment bounced. Christine had to pay attention, really pay attention, to the logistics she had always assumed I'd manage. And through it all, I felt a strange exhilaration. For the first time, my presence, or my absence, mattered in a way beyond money or labor. They had to acknowledge me, truly, as a person with boundaries, with needs, with agency. And for the first time, I realized respect wasn't something I could demand in words. I had to demonstrate it in action. By the end of the week, I wasn't just a brother or a son. I was a person. And for the first time in decades, they had to see me. The next morning, I awoke to an empty apartment and the quiet hum of the city outside my window. For the first time in years, it felt like my space unclaimed, unbothered, entirely mine. I brewed a cup of coffee and sank into my chair, letting the silence wash over me. But silence has a way of being short-lived with my family. By 10 a.m., my phone buzzed like it was possessed. Amanda again, Christine, Aunt Lisa, all of them, in some way, testing boundaries, poking at the cracks I'd just carved in their lives. Amanda's tone had shifted. She was no longer begging outright. This time, it was manipulative. "Nathan, I don't understand why you're doing this. Everyone is struggling, and I thought family was supposed to stick together. I'm hurt, funny word. I thought about the countless times I'd been the one hurt silently while keeping the wheels turning. I typed a reply, then erased it. I didn't owe her explanations. Instead, I let it simmer. I decided, consciously, that my actions would speak louder than any word. I wouldn't run errands. I wouldn't pick up bills. I wouldn't be the invisible engine powering their comfortable lives. And I wouldn't apologize. By midday, Amanda showed up at my apartment, unannounced. I opened the door, coffee still in hand, and faced her with the calm I'd cultivated. She tried the emotional approach first, tears in her eyes, voice shaking. "Nathan, please, I can't do this without you. You're the only one who understands how everything works." I felt a pang, but it wasn't guilt. It was recognition. Recognition that she needed me, not loved me, not cared for me, but needed me. And that was exactly why I couldn't cave. "I've been helping for years," I said evenly. "I'm not saying no to be cruel. I'm saying no because I need to exist outside of all of you for once." She froze. Her lower lip trembled, and I saw the gears turning behind her eyes. "Nathan, you don't understand. This isn't just about you. We're a family," I nodded. "Exactly. And a family means respect, not exploitation." Her reaction was subtle, but telling. She flinched. The kind of flinch you see in people who have always assumed their power is absolute. The look that says, "You can't do this. You can't break the pattern," Christine called next. Her voice, though trembling, tried to sound rational. "Nathan, can't we just sit down and talk? Maybe compromise." Compromise. Another word I'd heard 1,000 times. Always compromise, never recognition, never acknowledgement. I agreed. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed them to face reality. We met at a small cafe, the kind where nobody knew our history, and the table became a battlefield. I laid everything out, every favor, every bill, every unpaid obligation I'd silently covered. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply stated facts. Christine's face paled. Amanda looked like she was seeing me for the first time, the real me, not the ghost of the person they'd been exploiting. Aunt Lisa, who had also joined, tried the manipulative guilt angle. "Nathan, you're being unfair. You've always been our rock. Can't you just help for one more time?" I leaned forward, calm but unyielding. "I've been your rock my entire life, and you've never acknowledged it. I'm not saying no to hurt you. I'm saying no because I matter too." The silence that followed was almost holy. They hadn't expected that. They didn't want that. The family dynamic had always been predictable, controlled. And now, for the first time, single quotes. By the end of the meeting, they left, not defeated, but unsettled. I felt a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. It wasn't over. I knew it wouldn't be. But for the first time, I had drawn a line that they couldn't cross without consequences. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, thinking about the months ahead. There would be confrontations, they would test me at every turn, emotionally, financially, socially. But I was ready. I had spent too long bending, too long disappearing, too long being invisible. The next week proved exactly that. Christine sent an email with a meticulously crafted, guilt-laden message. Amanda tried to enlist friends to pressure me. Aunt Lisa made passive-aggressive comments on social media, tagging me in every post about family events I wasn't attending. I didn't react. I observed. I catalogued. I realized that my family wasn't trying to hurt me maliciously. They were trying to restore the old order, the comfortable order where I silently accommodated everyone else. And in that moment, I understood that my rebellion wasn't just about me. It was about redefining what it meant to be a family. Late one night, Amanda showed up again. This time, she wasn't crying. She was angry. "Nathan, why won't you just do what's easy? You're making everyone miserable." I met her gaze calm, firm. "I'm making everyone face reality. You'll survive. We'll survive. But I'm done surviving for everyone else." She stormed out. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. And that was when it hit me. The next phase of this story wasn't about confrontation or guilt or manipulation. It was about observing, testing, and deciding who would change, who would break, who would respect me, and most importantly, who would vanish when I stopped being their invisible rock. I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the city skyline. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, it felt like I was finally in control of my own story. And for the first time in decades, I wasn't afraid of the fallout. The following morning, I woke to a quiet apartment again, but the calm didn't last. I knew it wouldn't. Families don't forgive boundaries easily. They test, they push, they infiltrate your space until it becomes theirs again. And mine had a strategy. It started subtly. Messages from Amanda, ostensibly casual, asking if I'd eaten breakfast, if I remembered to take my vitamins. Christine sent me links to recipes, suggesting I could cook for everyone like old times. Aunt Lisa commented on my social media posts, tagging every family member with passive-aggressive captions. "Hope Nathan remembers who keeps this family together." It was all designed to provoke, to pull me back into the system they were used to controlling. I ignored the bait, but then more direct tactics emerged. Amanda showed up at my workplace, ostensibly to drop off something I might need. Security frowned at her presence, and I told her to leave. She didn't argue. She just shot me a look, the kind of look people give when they think they're morally superior, when they think their actions are justified by love or obligation. I realized something crucial in that moment. Their manipulation wasn't random. It was methodical. Every visit, every call, every text had a purpose. And that purpose was to make me doubt myself, to make me question my right to autonomy. So I started documenting everything. Every call, every message, every interaction. I didn't respond with anger. I responded with facts, with boundaries, and with quiet observation. And the more I did, the more they shifted tactics. Christine finally cornered me one evening after work. She was calm but cold, eyes sharp as knives. "Nathan, we need to talk. This is getting out of hand. You can't just ignore family responsibilities forever." I let her speak, and when she finished, I said softly, "I'm not ignoring responsibilities. I'm redefining them. And I won't participate in a system that only serves you, not me." Her composure cracked, just slightly. The mask slipped. For a moment, I saw the real fear behind the polite anger. She didn't want to lose me as a resource. She didn't want to face the possibility that I could exist independently of their control. Meanwhile, Aunt Lisa escalated on social media. She posted pictures of family gatherings I wasn't invited to, subtly shaming me with captions like, "Family first," even when some choose distance. I didn't react. I let the comments sit. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. Silence became my weapon. Then came the tipping point. Amanda, Christine, and Aunt Lisa all coordinated, whether consciously or unconsciously. I couldn't tell, to confront me at the same time. They arrived at my apartment on a Saturday morning, uninvited, under the guise of family meeting. I opened the door, already prepared. I wasn't angry. I wasn't defensive. I was calm. "You're here. Let's talk. But understand, I've changed the rules. I won't be dragged back into the old patterns. Amanda tried the emotional angle again, voice quivering. Nathan, we love you. You're tearing the family apart. Christine followed, rationalizing. It's not about control. It's about all of us. Can't you just see that? And Aunt Lisa, ever the manipulator, tried the guilt. We've raised you, supported you, always been there. How can you turn your back now? I listened, I nodded. I acknowledged their words, without giving them power. And then I spoke, each word deliberate, each pause calculated. I understand your feelings. But I've spent decades being everything for everyone and nothing for myself. That ends today. I won't disappear anymore. I won't cater to guilt or fear. I won't be invisible. You can't manipulate me into compliance anymore. There was a beat of silence. 3 faces staring at me, processing the new reality. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Authority over my own life. Amanda finally snapped, her voice rising. You're being selfish. Don't you care about family? I didn't flinch. I care about myself. And until you respect that, everything else, everything is secondary. Then something remarkable happened. They left, not angrily, not with a dramatic exit, but quietly, like they were absorbing a truth they couldn't change. And as the door clicked shut, I realized something. Breaking the pattern was lonely, but it was also liberating. The days that followed were intense. Messages stopped. Visits ceased. Social media taunts dwindled. It was as if a storm had passed, leaving eerie calm in its wake. I spent the time reflecting, finally seeing the family dynamic for what it truly was. A system built on invisible labor, emotional manipulation, and unspoken expectations, and I vowed not to participate anymore. That night, I sat on my balcony, staring at the city lights. For the first time, I wasn't running. I wasn't accommodating. I was present, fully aware of myself, fully in control. But I also knew this was just the beginning. Family dynamics aren't static. They evolve, they adapt, they test boundaries over and over again. And my family, the people I'd loved and served for decades, would adapt. They would escalate. They would try to break me again. And next time, I'd be ready. Weeks had passed since the showdown. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the calm before the storm. I had reclaimed control over my life, but I could feel the undercurrent, the quiet plotting, the whispered doubts, the questions that would inevitably come. Family dynamics don't disappear. They transform, then it happened. The call that shattered the fragile equilibrium. It was Amanda. Her voice was trembling, almost unrecognizable. Nathan, it's Dad. He's in the hospital. Heart attack. They said it's serious. The words hit me like a punch I hadn't seen coming. For a moment, every boundary, every rule, every fight I'd had with them seemed irrelevant. Family wasn't just the manipulators, the guilt trips, the constant pressure. It was also real people, vulnerable and human. I drove through the night to the hospital, my mind racing. I wanted to feel anger, resentment, clarity, but all I felt was a cold knot of anxiety and fear. When I arrived, I saw my father lying there, frail and weak, a shadow of the man I had known. Christine and Amanda were already there, faces pale, voices low, murmuring medical updates. Seeing them all together, stripped of pretense, stripped of arguments, I realized something. All the years of manipulation, all the tension, all the games. They had masked something deeper. Fear. Fear of losing me. Fear of losing each other. Fear of confronting mortality. Dad opened his eyes weakly. He looked at me and whispered, "Nathan, you came." I held his hand. There was no anger in that moment. No rules, no just raw, undeniable human connection. Over the next few days, I stayed by his side. We talked about the past, the mistakes, the ways we'd hurt each other without fully realizing. And for the first time, the walls between us started to crumble. Christine approached me one evening, hesitant. "Nathan, I'm sorry. For everything. I thought I was helping, but I see now I was." Controlling. Amanda nodded, tears streaming. "We all were. We didn't know how else to be. It was strange, this mix of relief and heartbreak. Relief that acknowledgement was finally here. Heartbreak for the years lost in tension, fear, and manipulation. Dad survived, thanks to the quick response and medical care, but he was weaker. Watching him recover made me reflect on life, on family, on boundaries. Control and love, guilt and affection, they had all been intertwined, twisted in ways I hadn't understood until now. I realized the truth. I didn't need to break completely free to find peace. I just needed to find balance. I could set boundaries, protect myself, and still be part of their lives without losing my autonomy. The first family gathering after Dad's discharge was awkward, tense, but it was honest. No manipulations, no hidden agendas, just conversations, small steps, tentative smiles. And for the first time in decades, I felt like I belonged, not as the obedient son or the invisible mediator, but as Nathan, present, assertive, and human. That night, alone in my apartment, I reflected on the journey, the battles, the arguments, the emotional games. They had been exhausting, painful, and necessary, because without them, I wouldn't have found this strength, this clarity, this understanding of who I truly was. Family was complicated. Family could hurt you, but family could also teach you resilience, compassion, and the delicate art of balance. And as I looked out at the city lights, I finally understood. Life doesn't give second chances lightly, but when it does, you have to embrace them fully, consciously, and with all the courage you can muster. I had fought, I had resisted, I had set boundaries, and in doing so, I had found a version of peace I never thought possible. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt alive. I felt free. And I knew, no matter what came next, I had the strength to face it, unflinching, unapologetic, unbroken.